On November 8, 1620, a modern army, supremely confident in its revolutionary new tactics, was annihilated in less than 2 hours. Their flexible formations designed for maneuver and firepower just collapsed. Their kingdom was doomed. And who defeated them? An army relying on a formation many considered a relic, pike-and-shot squares inspired by the Spanish. This wasn't supposed to happen. It was a catastrophic lesson in how discipline and brute force could shatter modern military theory. A 2-year-old rebellion broke that day, setting the stage for one of the most destructive conflicts in human history, the 30 Years' War. The story begins not on a battlefield, but in a castle window. The Holy Roman Empire was a patchwork of states divided by religion. The Peace of Augsburg, 1555, tried to calm tensions by allowing rulers to choose their realm's faith. But Bohemia was a pressure cooker. Most nobles were Protestant, while the crown was traditionally Catholic and in Habsburg hands. When Emperor Matthias named his cousin Ferdinand of Styria as heir in 1617, tensions exploded. Ferdinand, a zealous Catholic, had no tolerance for Protestant autonomy, throwing them out of a third-story window. Miraculously, on May 23, 1618, Protestant nobles stormed Prague Castle. Arguing with Ferdinand's Catholic envoys before survived, Catholics called it divine protection, Protestants muttered about a pile of manure. This defenestration of Prague lit the fuse. The Bohemian estates deposed Ferdinand, offered the crown to Frederick V of the Palatinate, and raised an army. The young Winter King, as he became known, seized Prague. Ferdinand rallied allies, Spain and the Catholic League under Maximilian of Bavaria. By 1620, 2 armies were converging on Prague for a showdown. Christian of Anhalt commanded about 21,000 Bohemians and mercenaries, Germans, Hungarians, Scots. He arranged them in Dutch-inspired formations pioneered by Maurice of Nassau. Shallow battalions allowed more musketeers to fire at once. Ranks rotated, creating a rolling volley of musket fire. It was flexible, modern, and devastating in theory. Opposing them, the Catholic League and Imperial Army, 23,000 to 28,000 strong, relied on the Tercio tradition, deep blocks of pikemen flanked by musketeers. Not every unit was a textbook Spanish Tercio, but the principle was the same: dense, resilient formations that absorbed punishment and advanced with crushing momentum. The contrast wasn't simply old versus new. It was untested theory against proven practice. The Bohemian army, unpaid and low in morale, had the blueprint of a modern system but not the discipline to use it. The Catholic army, sometimes called outdated, was battle-hardened, confident, and led by seasoned commanders who knew how to break weaker foes. The Tercio was more than a formation. It was a fortress of men. At its core stood pikemen with 18-foot spears, nearly invulnerable to cavalry. At the corners, musketeers in sleeves fired devastating volleys before retreating behind the pikes to reload. Critics said it was slow, clumsy, and outdated, but its strength was resilience. Where the Dutch system emphasized flexibility and firepower, the Tercio embodied mass and discipline. Leading the Catholic forces were Count of Bohemian for the Imperials and Johann Cerclaes, Count of Tilly for the League. Tilly, fierce and devout, believed in the unstoppable push of disciplined troops. Between them, they represented decades of battlefield experience. On the frosty morning of November 8, 1620, the Bohemians held the high ground at White Mountain. Bohemian hesitated to attack uphill, but Tilly and Maximilian of Bavaria pressed for an assault, convinced the Protestants were demoralized. A fiery sermon roused the Catholic troops. Around noon, Imperial League forces advanced steadily. Artillery opened the fight, but the shock came when Bavarian and Walloon veterans slammed into the Bohemian left. This was where Dutch tactics were meant to shine, continuous volleys shredding dense squares. Instead, demoralized mercenaries fired once at long range, then fled. Units dissolved before contact. Christian II, the commander's son, led a desperate cavalry charge that briefly checked the advance. But Tilly unleashed his cuirassiers, who smashed into the flank and drove them off. The sight of fleeing cavalry broke morale completely. Panic spread like fire. Within 2 hours, much of the Bohemian army was collapsing. Christian of Anhalt tried to rally the center, ordering his infantry forward. For a moment, it was system against system. Shallow Dutch lines versus deep imperial blocks. Then Tilly ordered a general advance. Pike squares lowered their weapons and pressed forward, not charging but grinding ahead like a human wall. The Bohemian formations, already shaken, simply couldn't withstand the pressure. They bent, then broke. As chaos spread, Polish Lisochisi light cavalry swept in from the flank and rear. What had been a retreat became a rout. Soldiers streamed toward Prague, pursued by Catholic cavalry. The battle was effectively decided in under 2 hours. Of 21,000 Bohemian troops, about 4,000 were killed or captured. Catholic losses were only around 700. The Winter King Frederick fled that night. The next day, Prague fell without resistance. Ferdinand II took revenge. In 1621, 27 rebel leaders were executed in Prague's Old Town Square, their heads displayed as a warning. Bohemia's constitution was abolished. Its crown made hereditary to the Habsburgs. Protestantism was outlawed. Thousands of nobles, craftsmen, and intellectuals fled, their lands confiscated. German gradually displaced Czech in official life. For nearly 300 years, Bohemia would remain under Habsburg control. How did an ancient tactic crush a modern army? White Mountain shows that doctrine means nothing without discipline. The Bohemian army had modern ideas, but no unity or morale. Their unpaid mercenaries had little reason to stand firm. Volley fire requires discipline. Panic shattered it before it could work. The Catholic side didn't win, because the Tercio was magically superior forever. Later wars would prove otherwise. They won because their troops were veterans, their system simple and robust, their morale high. Against fragile opponents, that was decisive. White Mountain was not just a battle lost, but a kingdom destroyed. It cemented Habsburg power, crushed Protestant Bohemia, and plunged Central Europe deeper into a war that would rage for 30 more years. The 30 Years' War would become one of the most devastating conflicts in history, entangling religion and politics across Europe. If you'd like us to cover the rise of Gustavus Adolphus or the war's brutal later phases, let us know in the comments. And don't forget to subscribe for more deep dives into how battles shaped history. Thanks for watching, and join us in our next video. This is History Replay, This Day.